Queen's Blood is the new card minigame added into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and whether you love it or hate it, some missions require you beating enemies with the heart of the cards. So, having finished the game, completed all of the Queen's Blood challenges and difficulty ranks, as well as unlocking every single card you can get, I figured it would be helpful for you guys if we rounded together what this card game is, how you play it, as well as several tips, tricks and cards, and even a starter deck to help you all out and make your life easier. Drop any tips or combos you've learned about Queen's Blood down below so we can all learn together as a community, and let's jump into it with an overview. Queen's Blood is a card game where you take turns placing down a card in 3 horizontal lanes. Each of these lanes will have green pawns on it that allow you to play a card with the matching number of pawns, or rank on the card as it's called in the game. You can play a lower rank card on spaces with a higher number of pawns, but generally speaking, the higher the rank of the card, the stronger it will be. At the start of the match, you can mulligan, which lets you highlight any number of cards you don't like the look of to redraw them before starting. Generally, you will want to mulligan the 2 or 3 cost cards, as you can't play these at the beginning anyway. Each card will have a highlighted pattern on it, showing the placement of new pawns in the adjacent spaces, allowing you to reach further across the field. Placing cards down will give you points that will be added to the lane's total. Both you and the enemy will have a point total per lane, and this is the total power of all cards you control on those lanes. The player with the most points in each lane will have that number added to their total, and the highest total scoring player will win. A very important mechanic, and one that you must play around in order to consistently win, is claiming new positions on the board. Placing cards allows you to add pawns to new positions based on the pattern of the card you play. However, and this is important, you can steal pawns from enemies by placing cards that will then claim a space even if an enemy pawn is already on it. This means when placing cards, you must look for openings to advance towards the other side of the board, but also guard your own side. For example, let's say both you and the enemy have a pawn on the second row of each side of the field. If you play a card on your side, you will then place a new pawn in the center row of the field. But this means if they mirror your move, they can steal the middle pawn from you, making it much harder to reclaim, and thus giving them more positions and ultimately more power. So a good rule of thumb is to leave a space between your pawn and the enemy's pawn while advancing other lanes with better openings. This means when an enemy eventually places a card on their pawn and advances to the middle of the board, you can then counter it by placing a card on your pawn and stealing that middle row. As you play and progress the game, you're going to unlock new cards with various special effects and powers that really mix up the meta. This means at different intervals as you rank up, you will likely need to mix up your deck completely as new mechanics and powers are introduced. But for many of the early to mid game matches, you can effectively brute force it with a strong deck and good placement. You will need to challenge all of the players of each rank in order to rank up and unlock stronger opponents to face, granting you new cards and progressing you through the mysterious Queen's Blood storyline. There's a number of different special powers and effects that become available to you as you play the game. Some you will start with and others will become available later on at higher ranks. You can see if a card has a power by the little star icon on the bottom left of the card. Some cards can enhance other cards, and you can see where they will apply this benefit based on the orange square in the card's pattern preview. If the orange square is hollow, it means it applies it to that square but doesn't add a pawn to that square if it's unoccupied. If the orange square is filled in, it will apply a pawn to that slot and buff that slot, so there is a slight difference there. Some cards can enfeeble enemies or allies, and this means they will reduce the power of a card, and if it brings the card's power to 0, that card will be destroyed. If the affected card is destroyed and you have a card with a filled in orange square, it will also claim that slot for you after the card is removed. And there are even cards that directly destroy cards without enfeebling them. Both enhancing and enfeebling effects can be done in different ways, and some cards do this diagonally or adjacent, so it's generally different per card. On top of this, some cards have special effects that apply when they are enfeebled, enhanced or destroyed, opening up loads of combos at higher ranks. For example, when a Flame Trooper is destroyed, it will lower the power of all cards behind it by 3. When a Deathclaw is in play, any card that gets destroyed will enhance its power by 1, or the Rictus will gain 1 power each time a card is enfeebled, so there's a lot you can do here. Some cards also add more cards to your hand, increasing your card economy because you only have 15 cards in your deck, and once you run out of them, you will not draw any more. For example, the Mandragora will duplicate itself into a minion within your hand when you play it for the first time. More powerful cards become available later that do this as well, such as Sid, who will give you the tiny Bronco card when you play him. A really cool power that some special cards have include granting you a bonus number of points if you win the lane the card is played in. For example, the Chocobo Jockey will give you a massive 10-point bonus if you win the lane, but it has a 2 rank cost and only 2 power, so there is a trade-off. Later in the game, you will actually unlock replace cards. These really mix up the meta as you can use these to replace any card you currently have in play. This effectively destroys the card you replace, but this will enhance cards that benefit from the destruction of other cards. It's also a great way to reclaim pawns even if you don't have any left. Some replace cards have special effects, like the Griffin, raising an ally's power by the destroyed card's amount, or the Gi Spectre, lowering the power of a card by the destroyed card's power. There's a few more unique powers that you can get later on, such as Shiva, who once played will place Diamond Dust cards all over your empty pawn slots, effectively ending any further plays you can do, but for now, these are the core mechanics. Cards can be gained in several different ways, firstly from beating enemies, making you slowly get stronger and stronger cards as you rank up, but there's also vendors that sell card bundles, letting you mix up your deck with stronger cards again as you progress. Some are available in the general store right at the start of the game, so pick them up, but there's also a specific card vendor in the Dust Bowl area. There are several cards you will get throughout challenges, both in Costa del Sol and the Golden Saucer. And finally, after unlocking summons, you can go to Thorin, the card collector in the Grasslands, after completing the side quest A Rare Card Lost in that early game area. So, check the vendors, beat enemies, do challenges, and buy from Thorin to get all of the cards. Here's some helpful tactics and tips to help you win. Try to always play cards that give you the most board control early on. For example, the starting card Security Officer isn't very strong, and you will replace him later, but he has great coverage in terms of the spaces around him, making it a great card to play on turn 1 in the middle lane, as well as the second row to expand your board control. Always keep a space between your pawns and the enemy pawns, so when they claim their pawn slot and take the middle empty space, you can then play on your pawn slot and reclaim that empty space, and they won't have a way to take it back. You should save cards that have enhance, enfeeble, or destroy effects, or even the bonuses to 1 lanes, until you're absolutely sure they're worth playing. For example, playing a Crystalline Crab early on is nice if you have no other option, but because it buffs the card above it by 2, this can come in clutch for winning the top or middle lane. So if you play this early on, you're reducing your flexibility. So try to save cards with power until they are most effective to use unless you have no other option. If you're really struggling with making a deck, you can actually make pre-built decks, and some of these aren't too bad, especially if you tweak them a little bit. Go to build a deck and then press the start button with the 3 lines, and this will show you all of the pre-built decks that you can currently make with the cards you own. Take note, because cards that synergize with enhancement or enfeeble become extremely powerful later on, with cards like Ifrit, Alexander, Rictus, and more, all giving you a ton of points when activated together. And next up, you should know the replace cards are a must-have in your deck when you eventually unlock them. They allow you to reclaim pawns if the enemy makes a good play or does a replace of their own. I recommend having 3 or 4 replace cards in your deck. Next up, let's go over some great early game cards that helped me through most of the start and middle game matches. The Cactuar is a great card both for its coverage, but also its enhance effect that will buff the bottom lane by 3. You effectively always need to place this in the top lane because it buffs 2 lanes down, but it's definitely worth it in those early games. In addition to this, the Crystalline Crab has great coverage and buffs the card above it by 2, making it a great option to play in the middle or bottom lane, and it advances your board control quite nicely. The Chocobo and Moogle card that you get from A Rare Card Lost early on is a fantastic first turn play in the middle lane, and it will keep getting buffed throughout the match as other cards you control get enhanced, making it synergize very well with the Cactuar and Crystalline Crab. You also can get the Titan summon in the Grasslands region very early on. When you do this, you want to buy the Titan card from Thorin the Collector, as this is a very powerful 2-cost card that has great coverage but also a unique effect that makes the slots around it put 2 pawns down instead of 1. Ifrit is another summon you get very early at the start of the game basically, and you can buy him off of Thorin similar to Titan. The thing is, Ifrit has a power similar to the Chocobo and Moogle, making making all of this a kind of wombo combo together. It increases in power for every enhanced ally, and with the Cactuar, Crystalline Crab, and Chocobo and Moogle all getting enhancement effects, it really starts to snowball. It does cost 3 pawns to place Ifrit, but this should be easy because you have Titan that places 2 pawns down instead of 1. Finally, cards like the Riot Trooper and Ogre are strong 2-rank cards that offer unique coverage and were great for me early on. Many of these cards will be replaced when you get to rank 7 or 8 onwards, but they will serve you well until then. So here is my recommended starter deck that got me through many of the early game matches with ease. You will tweak and improve this as you go, but if you're struggling early, this should really help. This deck has a combination of cards with great coverage, several ways to enhance your cards, making the Chocobo and Moogle plus Ifrit spike in power, and some very strong 2-rank cards with unique pattern coverage, allowing interesting ways to claim more of the board and defend your side of the field. Put any tips that you've discovered down below in the comments so we can all learn together. We hope this helps you out, and we'll have more Final Fantasy Rebirth content coming your way.